I'm going to speak to you on a subject which is, in my opinion, a defining event of this decade. And it's the beginning of a new approach to restructuring our society into a more clean society. In 2014 elections, the Prime Minister asked me to, the then candidate for Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, had asked the party to set up a committee on strategic action for the elections. And I was selected as the chairman. And we had recommended, amongst the many measures for fighting black money, demonetization of the part of the currency. 2.5 years later or more, demonetization was taken as a strategic objective, and the Prime Minister on the 8th of November night announced that by midnight 500 rupee notes and 1000 rupee notes will become what he called as useless pieces of paper. A successful policy has 4 components: the objective, the priority or the priorities, the strategy to achieve those objectives according to those priorities, and the necessary machinery and resources to execute that strategy. Now, the demonetization of 1000 rupee note and 500 rupee note was a strategy to achieve the objective of eliminating black money. How much it has affected black money is one of the questions that we are asking today, and I'll give you my answer. But let me say that demonetization is only a small part of the strategy for eliminating black money. For eliminating black money, we have to actually take many other kinds of measures. This demonetization was focused on the stock of black money that is held by people, which is what? Unaccounted money, which is generated by avoiding paying taxes by false accounting, by under-invoicing and over-invoicing exports and imports, by deliberately undervaluing the value of a property so that you don't have to pay the tax at a higher valuation. So there are many ways by which you avoid paying taxes, and that avoidance of tax is actually an evasion, and that amount is black money. It's also used in illicit, illegal operations, purchase and sale of narcotics, prostitution, and in terms of spending in elections and bribing of voters. So, therefore, black money is a quantum of money which is not disclosed to anybody, and it takes place in secret transactions where the giver and the taker both participate in it. Now, what happens when I have black money and I go in a taxi and the taxi fare is paid by me out of that black money in my pocket? The taxi driver who takes the money, he has legitimately earned that money. And so the black money in my pocket suddenly becomes white money in his pocket. And therefore, inside the country, the black money is sometimes black, sometimes white, depending on how it is used. Black money within the country is not a stock per se. And that is why we measure black money in terms of transactions. What proportion of the total transactions in the country is outside the auditing system or the accounting system? And it's roughly estimated that 40% of our GDP, which represents the net transactions in the country in a year, is black. So to tackle that, you need a variety of instruments. But the most efficient instrument is to change the economic system so that you do not have an incentive to avoid paying taxes. For instance, in 1991, when Mr. Narasimha Rao and before that Mr. Chandrasekhar were prime ministers, and I held a ministerial rank position in both, as the senior most minister of commerce and law in Mr. Chandrasekhar's government. This problem of black money was tackled by simplifying the system. We abolished quotas and licenses. Jawaharlal Nehru introduced the Soviet economic system into our country. It was not approved by Mahatma Gandhi and Sardar Patel, but Jawaharlal Nehru never listened to anybody. Sometimes used to listen to Edwin or Mountbatten, but and he imposed this Soviet system in which every transaction for building a factory required a license. For purchasing the materials for that factory required a quota and a permit. And over the years, it became a group of touts emerged who for ability to get the favors associated themselves with the Congress party, and they would be able to get the license from the minister approved, and then they would sell it to the industrialist who's seeking the license at a premium, and that extra amount would be then distributed between the tout and the minister. That's how the black money problem started in India. So by abolishing licenses for starting an industry, for abolishing quotas and permits for export and import, which Narasimha Rao did, we created a new situation where the growth rate between 1950 and 1990, which was just 3.5% per year, and Narasimha Rao's period when rose to become 9% at the end of 5 years. But Narasimha Rao lost the election. His party strength became half. Why did the country behave like this? The man who produced an economic miracle, and you defeat him in an election? The reason was by abolishing licenses and quotas, you deprived the touts of their money that they were making in the black market. And unfortunately, over the years, because of political influence which these touts wanted, they became important persons inside the Congress party. And it was the Congress party which defeated Narasimha Rao by misleading the people that this reform was for rich people and not for poor people. And this happened all over. Chandrababu Naidu lost in Andhra. S.M. Krishna lost in Karnataka. These were known as reformers, and they all lost elections. And later on, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who ran on the slogan of India Shining, he too lost. So therefore, you have to know one thing, that when you bring about a reform, make sure that the beneficiaries of that reform gain as quickly as the losers in that reform. I had told Narasimha Rao at that time, and I told the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, this time too, that you must do something where the people see immediate benefit for them. Or at least some of the people, important, influential sections of people see immediate benefit. And he asked me, what is that immediate reform? I said, this abolishing quotas, licenses, is no use telling the people by a filtered down process will be benefited. We have been benefited. Our economy is much stronger, much bigger than in the 40 years after independence. But the people only now begin to realize what a great man Narasimha Rao is. At that time, they were annoyed to see that the industrialists were happy, they didn't have to have licenses, didn't have to pay touts, and they were misled by newspapers. Newspapers those days were as bad as today. And so I told Mr. Narasimha Rao, there's one step you can take which has immediate benefit for a very important section of our population, that is abolish income tax. Because people are fed up with income tax, not because they don't want to pay, but because they are harassed by the income tax inspectors, the income tax officers. And they would be happy to pay a flat amount, but it's much easier just to abolish it because that's immediate effect. Simplify the indirect tax system, which is a maze of paperwork, harasses the shopkeepers, harasses the small traders. These will produce immediate relief. Then he asked me, what about the rural masses? I said, create a water grid, which means digging canals. That will immediately build an employment network for the people and will improve agriculture. So therefore I'm saying that the thing that our government did not do was brought a measure without a compensating relief to the people who had to suffer this sudden erosion of their money. Not all of them were black money holders. A lot of them were housewives who quietly had stashed away in the almari some amount of money because of the rainy day that they were fearful might come. So this was announced. The worst part is that my committee had in 2014 had recommended that once we demonetize, which we are in favor of, we must be sure that the compensating increase in the currency of other denomination has already taken place. We had recommended 6 times more 100 rupee notes than before, and estimated it would take about 2 years. And a new 200 rupee note also brought into circulation, all of the same size, not a smaller size, otherwise the ATM problem would have been there like now there is for 2,000 rupees. So, first of all, what turns out is that the demonetization, did not have this preparation. The Prime Minister on the 7th of November by letter through his office had written to the Reserve Bank saying that the Prime Minister proposes to do this and wants this immediate action to be initiated. Now, the Reserve Bank board includes 2 members of the Finance Ministry. So to say that the Finance Ministry is not in the loop is not correct. 2 senior secretaries of the Finance Ministry were members of the board. The board ought to have told the Prime Minister, we have not printed any extra notes of 100 rupees. We were planning to bring out a 2,000 rupee note anyway. Did not say that it's going to be a smaller size and there's going to be a problem of fitting it into the ATMs. And told the Prime Minister, of course, go ahead, we will move into it and there will be, people will be thrilled, etc., etc. And that lack of preparation is the only reason why this desirable measure has not worked the way we wanted it to work. Today, what's the situation? Demonetization was supposed to eliminate black money. Has it eliminated black money? To some extent, we put the terrorists out of action because they were dealing with counterfeit notes. The reason Pakistan could easily counterfeit our note is that India doesn't produce its own currency paper. And so we import it from abroad. And the former finance minister, whose name I did not take because he's going to soon go to jail. He gave this to contract to a company called De La Rue in London to print currency paper in which would be then placed in the Nasik press and other presses that we have to print notes. Our agencies like the RAW, IB, CBI all opposed this, saying that De La Rue also prints currency paper for Pakistan. It will become easy for Pakistan just to give money to that private company and get Indian currency paper, which they can then print in their country and make it a very difficult to detect counterfeit currency. But the then finance minister didn't agree, and we also continued with it. Why, I don't know. Some love is there among some of us for the former finance minister, obviously. But the fact of the matter is that enabled terrorists to print a lot of counterfeit notes, a total of 5% of our currency. But they were all used for terror activities. And suddenly this 500,000 rupee notes being demonetized, they were in big difficulty. Earlier on, every day from April, we were having young students coming out on the road because the schools were burned down by terrorists, so there was no school to go to. And then they got 500 rupee note from the Pakistani ISI-aided terrorists to throw a stone on the police of Kashmir. And they got 1,000 rupees if they threw a stone on the CRP or the BSF or the Indian Army. Now, suddenly this currency had become illegal. And so, after November 8th, there's been no stone throwing in Kashmir so far. But that's not good enough. We want to eliminate black money. Has it been eliminated? At least 10% eliminated, at least 20% eliminated. I asked my friends in the Reserve Bank how much currency has come back. People were putting money and then getting new notes. And it turns out that almost 100% has come back. Now, how can 100% come back? What had happened is that because there was no currency, if I had 10,000 rupees in black money and I gave a tout or a corrupt bank manager 25% of that, which is 2,500, then he gave me in new notes of 2,000 rupees the remaining 7,500. Of course, 500 rupee notes also, where new notes have come. So previously I had 10,000 rupees, and now I have 7,500 rupees. It is black because it's unaccounted, but it's in new notes. And this bank officer and tout have become rich by 2,500 rupees. So all that has happened after this demonetization is the amount of black money in the Indian economy is still the same, except that bank officers and touts have become very rich by getting 25%. And the black money holder had new black money notes, but at 75%. That is 75% of what he had before. Only a redistribution of the money has taken place. Understandable, because if you had adequate currency printed and anyone who went to the bank would change it without having to stand in a queue, there would have been no problem. And you would have identified the people. So now also it turns out that the terrorists in Kashmir have also used this route, lost 25% of their money, but have now got in place of counterfeit note, genuine Indian notes of 75%. And therefore, I will have to say that this present demonetization has not worked. It's not achieved its objective. But that doesn't mean that demonetization is a bad measure. It was badly planned, in the sense that there was no planning. Every ministry normally has to have a contingency plan, even if you are not asked. When in 2014 it was decided that we will fight black money and one of the measures will be demonetization, the finance ministry ought to have prepared a contingency plan, but it did not prepare. I do not know the reasons why. Maybe because the officers Mr. Chidambaram appointed are still continuing to be officers in our government. So why is it this important for us to fight black money in the first place? I had in fact suggested, after seeing the long queues, that why don't we do this? We say anybody has cash, any amount, he can deposit it in his bank account, no questions asked. But 25% will be taken away by the government. 25% you can withdraw as your cash in new notes. And 50% you will leave in fixed deposit for 5 years at 2% interest. A proposal was sent to the finance ministry, and what came out was 50%, excuse me, 50% of the tax was the government share would take, government would take not 25%, but 50%. And 25% will be put in fixed deposit at 0 interest, and 25% you can withdraw. Nobody came forward, because who is going to give 50% to the government when the tout is giving you for 25%? Somebody said, but this is government, this is legitimate. I said, it is not legitimate in the sense that I have to put my name in the register. Future government can track me and chase me. So everybody will be insecure. So he will look at only the risk. The risk is the same for both. And therefore he will continue to give to the bank corrupt bank official and the tout. And for 25%. The remaining 75% is now in brand new notes No fixed deposit, nothing. So, therefore, there were measures, and even today, I tell you, that we can retrieve the situation. The damage done today is not so much that you stood in a line and you were harassed, that you timed it such that it was coincided with the wedding season and hurt a lot of people in arranging marriages. But it was the collateral damage of that move, unprepared move. For example, from Bihar, migrant workers used to come every year to Punjab. They were paid in cash. There was no cash to pay. So therefore, they all went back home. They're sitting at home in Bihar, discontented. Same thing with Tamil Nadu. There are a lot of Biharis who used to go for rice, the rice season, which is now. But now they've all come back. One truck driver, freight truck owner told me that I've cut down the number of trucks I'm sending by 50% because each driver had to give him money for eating food in a dhaba, for paying in the petrol bunk, and perhaps a bribe here or there. And now I had no cash or small currency. I couldn't say, here's 2,000 rupees, go and eat in a dhaba and get a change, because no dhaba would give him change. You eat for 200 rupees and give him 2,000 rupees, he's not going to give you 1,800 rupees, he doesn't have it. So therefore, this kind of damage. Small and medium industries which relied heavily on daily wage workers, they had to shut down.